Our story begins as Anakin Skywalker is watching Ahsoka Tano walk down the stairs of the Jedi Temple. She was framed for the Jedi Temple bombing and expelled from the Jedi Order, and when the truth came out that it was actually Barriss Offee who was responsible for the bombing, Ahsoka just could not come back into the Order. They abandoned her when she needed them to be by her side more than ever, and Anakin also blamed the Council for this. When Ahsoka was gone, Anakin would enter back into the temple, but he would not go back into the Council. Instead, Anakin would just isolate himself inside of his room, wondering where all of this went so wrong. But inside of the Jedi Council chambers, many of the members were still here, including Obi-Wan, Ki-Adi-Mundi, Plo Koon, Yoda, and Mace Windu. The sun was setting on Coruscant, and they were going over the revelation of what Barriss did, and what she said in the courts about the Jedi losing their way. And after a long conversation, Obi-Wan Kenobi finally spoke up, saying that he thinks Anakin should be strongly considered to become a Jedi Master. The council members looked at Obi-Wan in surprise, and Obi-Wan met their gazes strongly. Then, he said that they were about to promote Ahsoka to Jedi Knight. She earned that title, and it was Anakin who trained her to that level. If it weren't for Ahsoka's choice to leave, she would be a knight right now, making Anakin eligible to become a master. And the only reason Ahsoka left was because of all of them, not because of Anakin. Ki-Adi-Mundi spoke up, wondering aloud if Anakin is actually mentally ready for this role. He can be unbalanced at times. But Plo Koon spoke now, saying there may be no better time than this to make Anakin a master. If there is one thing that they know about the young Jedi, it is that he is extremely loyal. And today, that loyalty to Ahsoka and to him may have been broken just a bit. Anakin has proven himself time and time again in battle, putting his life on the line while also balancing the need to protect life. Obi-Wan spoke again, saying that if any of them were in danger, Anakin would put his own life on the line to save them. And finally, Yoda would speak up, saying that in times of war such as these, the qualifications for becoming a Jedi Master should be different than in peace times. It had to be acknowledged that without Anakin, the Republic very well may not be in the same place during this war. Battles like the Second Battle of Geonosis, Mon Cala, Ryloth, Sullust. The list of victories went on and on for Anakin. So, after a bit longer, a vote would be taken to decide whether or not Anakin would become a Jedi Master. All of the council members spread across the galaxy would join via hologram or in person, as Mace Windu presented the idea, and the vote would be 11-1, with only Mace Windu voting against it. He said the boy is not ready, but Windu was heavily outvoted, and he would comply with the will of the council and the Force. So soon, Anakin was in his room, getting some very necessary sleep after many restless days during this trial. He was awoken by a knock on his door, and Anakin would slowly get up to find Obi-Wan, saying that the council would like to speak with him. Anakin shook his head, saying he has nothing to say to the council, but Obi-Wan just gave him a small smile, telling Anakin he definitely will not want to miss this. Anakin sighed, and he would indeed follow Obi-Wan back into the Jedi Council chambers. When they arrived, Anakin would be greeted by the room being in complete darkness, until the lightsabers were ignited, and Grandmaster Yoda would tell Anakin that by the will of the Force and the right of the Council, he is now being promoted to the rank of Jedi Master. The fog of disappointment and sadness seemed to fade away in Anakin's mind as he realized what was happening. Finally, Anakin was getting the recognition he felt he truly deserved after everything that he has gone through. And so Anakin would go through this ceremony, as he would indeed become a Jedi Master. And when the ceremony ended, Anakin ran down to the restricted section of the archives, and he was just overwhelmed with all of the information available to him. He made a mental note to go over all of it when he had time. But first, Anakin would leave the temple and go tell Padme the excellent news. And so in the days and weeks following his elevation to Jedi Master, Anakin Skywalker would push himself harder than ever before, as there was a guilt that was beginning to infect his mind about all of this. Though he accepted the honor with gratitude, he could not shake the feeling that it came at a cost, or a sacrifice. Ahsoka should have been there to see it, should have been by his side. She should have been walking her own path in Jedi knighthood. The guilt lingered, but a week after this promotion, Padme would arrange a private secret dinner to celebrate him, and to Anakin's surprise, when he arrived in the private Coruscant dining hall, Ahsoka was there, along with Rex, Obi-Wan, and a few others. Padme had put this together, and Obi-Wan just decided to let it happen. Ahsoka's presence eased some of Anakin's doubts, and when she eventually congratulated him, he allowed himself to believe, just for a moment, that he truly was worthy of this title. The meal was wonderful, full of laughs, shared memories, and finally, Anakin would allow himself to return to the war and embrace his new title as Jedi Master. And as always, upon returning, he led the war effort from the front, his presence on the battlefield an unshakable force, inspiring all the clones and the Jedi that he fought with. His powers that were already as formidable as almost any Jedi in the galaxy became something even more. Reflexes were sharper, mind became clearer, his control over the Force was deeper than ever. And he hadn't even spent much time in the restricted section yet. It was as if this elevation to Master just allowed Anakin to be more himself. He didn't have to prove himself anymore, and he moved through the war with an unrelenting drive, shaping battles in ways that proved to the Council Masters that they were right to believe in Anakin. And when Anakin was not on the battlefield, he was dedicating more time in the Jedi Temple, rather than always being with Padme or isolating himself. He began working more closely with the young Jedi in the Order, guiding them in ways he wished he had more of growing up. And finally, in the restricted section, Anakin would begin listening more to the wisdom of guys like Plo Koon, Saesee Tiin, as they would often find Anakin in here, and they would try guiding him, as they knew of Anakin's potential. Over time, Anakin's confidence did swell, but not into arrogance like some Jedi feared it might. Rather, it was becoming steady certainty and understanding of his role in the galaxy. He even found himself believing more in the Jedi's purpose, realizing that their duty was not just to fight, but to protect, to guide, to be the guardians that the Republic needed. He was no longer the reckless knight who rushed headlong into danger. He was more careful, but more powerful, a master in almost every sense of the word. And soon, one night in the Jedi Temple, Mace Windu would be alone with Anakin inside of the Jedi Archive section. The rest of the temple was asleep, but Windu was having more and more trouble sleeping these weeks. So, he wandered the temple until he found Anakin here all alone. The two of them sat near each other without a word, until finally, Anakin spoke up, asking Windu why he was the one master to vote against his elevation to master. There was no accusation in his tone, only the want or need to understand. May studied him for a long moment before finally answering. His deep voice was measured, as he simply said that he feared Anakin wasn't ready. He always saw Anakin's power, everyone did, but he also saw the anger, the attachments, the dismissal of orders. And Windu said that he thought making Anakin a master would only feed those struggles, not defeat them. Anakin nodded slowly, accepting these words without the sting they might have carried months ago. And Windu continued, his expression shifting to something rare, something almost close to pride, and he told Anakin that he was wrong. He gestured towards Anakin as if truly seeing him for the first time, and he told Anakin that he has grown in ways Windu did not expect. While his power has only continued to grow, so too has his wisdom, and he has shown Windu what it means to be a Jedi again. Mace took a long sip from the wine that he was drinking. Then he told Anakin that this war has caused him to lose a lot of himself. The darkness surrounding the galaxy has given him mental battles every single day. And he told Anakin that he misjudged him. He hopes to continue to watch him grow up in the Order. For a moment, Anakin was speechless. Mace Windu was not exactly known for admitting his faults, and yet here he was, acknowledging his miscalculation with true sincerity. Anakin felt something shift inside of him, not validation or pride, but just a sense of peace. The divide that was once between these two Jedi had seemingly been bridged, and Anakin couldn't help himself as he cracked a smile and told Windu that wine may be a bit too strong if it's making him say all of this. Windu just shook his head, but Anakin could sense the amusement in Windu's mind as he told Anakin to go and get some rest. He will surely be out in the battlefield soon. So Anakin left, knowing that he, Windu, and the rest of the Jedi in this galaxy would soon return to peaceful times. But deep in the shadows of the galaxy, the Sith watched with growing concern. This was not the Skywalker they'd planned for. He was supposed to be raw, unpredictable, powerful, flawed, a weapon ready to be turned against the Jedi. Instead, Anakin was becoming something far more dangerous, an unstoppable force of light, one who could not be seduced, but perhaps only be destroyed. The plan to twist him into their pawn had to be abandoned. Darth Sidious would issue a new order to Dooku. Anakin Skywalker must die. And so, a trap would be set, and a few weeks later, Anakin Skywalker was returning from a mission in the Outer Rim, when the Council called him and Obi-Wan to see them. The two Jedi entered to find out that the Council has intercepted a message stating that Dooku was going to the planet Tyth, a planet where the Separatists were starting up a new weapons factory. The Jedi knew this was their chance to capture him. Anakin and Obi-Wan were, naturally, best for the job, and they would be sent out to Tythe to capture Dooku once and for all. Skywalker and Kenobi would go together to the desolate planet. It had jagged cliffs, barren plains, stretching endlessly beneath a sky that was choked with storm clouds. It was unpleasant, and Anakin thought it was the perfect place for Dooku to be. But it would be a trap all along, as deep within the caves of Tythe, Dooku and Sidious waited together, their presences masked within the dark side. They were luring the Jedi here by organizing battle droids into the caves, and the Jedi determined this had to be where Dooku was hiding, and as expected, Anakin and Obi-Wan had come together. The two Jedi descended into the cave tunnels, lightsabers illuminating the damp stone walls. As they ventured deeper into the darkness, thinking they were going to surprise Dooku, unaware they were walking straight into a death trap. And soon enough, the attack would come like a phantom through the dark. From the shadows, Dooku's red blade ignited, slashing towards them with pure speed. Anakin barely deflected the strike before Sidious revealed himself, his hood masking his face, as a storm of lightning erupted towards them. The Jedi barely had time to react, dodging, countering, but the cave's narrow confines gave them very little room to maneuver. Anakin and Obi-Wan were forced backwards under the relenting onslaught, and every strike from Dooku was precise, every bolt of lightning from Sidious overwhelming. Together, the Sith were pressing their advantage, forcing the Jedi towards the cave's only exit. And as they neared the opening, Sidious flipped over them, raising a hand, seizing the Jedi with the Force, hurling them away from the exit, slamming them back into the depths of the cave. There would be no escape for the Jedi. Before they could recover, the Sith Lords moved in again. Obi-Wan met Dooku's blade this time, but Dooku's mastery of the duel was relentless, wearing Obi-Wan down with each elegant strike. Anakin turned his fury on Sidious, blocking every burst of dark energy, every twisting lunge of the Sith Lord's blade, but for the first time in his life, he felt truly outmatched. The exhaustion was mounting for Skywalker and Kenobi, and their defenses were cracking. And in a single, devastating movement, Dooku's blade found its mark. A sharp slash across Obi-Wan's chest sent him staggering. And before Anakin could even react, a blast of the Force sent his former master hurtling into the rock wall with a sickening crunch. Anakin yelled out in pain and anger, and something inside of Anakin broke. It was a flood of raw emotion surging through him, something he thought he swore off after becoming the Jedi Master. It was anger, despair, desperation, and without even thinking, Anakin unleashed all of it. A terrible guttural scream tore from his throat. But it was more than just sound. It was the Force itself, amplified by his rage. Anakin had unleashed a powerful Force scream at all of his enemies in here. The air seemed to shake and tremble as the Sith Lords were knocked to the ground. And then, the cavern walls shattered. The ceiling groaned, fractured, and completely collapsed. The Sith didn't have any time to react, as tons of rock came crashing down. Dust and darkness swallowed everything, seemingly killing everyone inside. The battle was over in an instant, and as silence filled the air, there was eventually some tiny movements. Buried beneath the ruin, Anakin's body was pinned, limbs trapped under the crushing weight. The pain was unbearable, but it was nothing compared to the fear that was rising in his chest. Obi-Wan. He had to find Obi-Wan. He could feel that Obi-Wan was still alive, waiting for him. So gritting his teeth, Anakin reached out with the Force, but his strength was fading. The weight of the rubble pressed down on him, suffocating him. Anakin closed his eyes, gathering what little remained of his will, and he calmed his mind, going deep into meditation. He no longer felt the pain of the rocks. He felt his power, and with a final, desperate surge, Anakin moved. His arms trembled as he pushed, every muscle in his body straining, mind reaching into the Force for one last burst of power. He yelled out as slowly, painfully, the stone finally began to shift, and inch by inch he forced his way out, dragging himself from the crushing darkness. As soon as Anakin's hand broke free into open air, he gasped, pulling himself upward. Ignoring his own pain, he stumbled through this wreckage, eyes darting through the settling dust, and he finally saw him. Obi-Wan, half buried, still not moving, but he was breathing. Anakin didn't hesitate. He clawed through the debris, lifting stone after stone, ignoring the searing pain in his limbs. He forced himself to keep going. Vision was blurring, breath ragged, and finally, he reached his master, pulling him free, cradling his broken body in his arms. He could feel Obi-Wan's faint pulse, and he knew there was little time. They had to get out of here, and with sheer willpower, Anakin lifted him onto his shoulders, staggering towards the light. The exit was barely visible through the rubble, and step by step, he walked out of the cave. At last, he emerged, stumbling into the fresh air of Tyth. His legs gave out, and he collapsed to his knees, Obi-Wan still in his grasp. Anakin used his comlink to call for R2, and they waited until the droid would finally arrive. When it was over, the two Jedi would take a long, needed rest in bacta tanks back in the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. Obi-Wan was badly injured, but Anakin had gotten him back just in time for him to survive. And when they were finally healed, Anakin found himself once again standing before Master Windu, the weight of his actions on Tyth pressing heavily upon him. He would confess the truth. He had not been able to hold back his darkness, that his power to defeat the Sith had come from a place of raw, unchecked emotion. He feared what it meant, but he feared for Obi-Wan's life, and that fear had saved him. And despite Anakin's growth, he knew the rage inside of him still lurked beneath the surface. But Windu did not condemn him for this. Instead, the Jedi Master offered guidance. If Anakin was willing, Windu would help him refine his power to master himself completely, and Anakin accepted the offer with the realization that he still had more to learn. And with the Sith destroyed, the galaxy took true steps to peace. The war had ended, and without Sidious, Palpatine manipulating the Republic, and without Dooku driving the Separatists, negotiations flourished. The Republic was under new leadership, and it sought to rebuild rather than to dominate the galaxy, and the war-torn systems were given the chance to heal after Grievous was quickly cornered and destroyed. The Jedi had returned to being what they were meant to be, guardians, diplomats, teachers, and Anakin, now firmly entrenched as a Jedi Master, found his place within the Order. And when the Mandalorians would call for aid against Maul, Anakin led the charge alongside Ahsoka Tano. Together, they would free Mandalore, and it was during this time that Ahsoka finally made her decision. After many months of searching for her own path, she chose to return to the Jedi Order as a Jedi Knight. Anakin and the Council welcomed her back, as the Jedi Order itself evolved, moving away from some rigid traditions that had once driven people like Ahsoka away, as a new era was beginning. Years would pass by, and the galaxy was flourishing. Anakin was on the roof of the Jedi Temple one evening, gazing out at Coruscant, at the city bathed in the warm glow of peace. There was no lingering doubt in his heart, no chains of destiny weighing him down. He'd walked the edge of darkness, and came back stronger, not only because of his power, but because of the people who helped guide him back. The future stretched out before him. He thought of Padme, their child that they named Jin, and Anakin knew he and his family were set to be the future of the galaxy going forward. And soon both Obi-Wan and Ahsoka would find him up here, as they all prepared to go forward together. And folks, that is our story today. One I've had written down for a long time, but just one I wanted to, kind of wait for now, as I'm going to be away for a bit. So, figured I'd have this and maybe one other video coming out this week, we shall see. But yeah, appreciate you guys watching. It was a fun story overall, one that I enjoyed quite a bit. Hope you did as well. Let me know what you thought down in the comments. Make sure to subscribe, of course. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next video.